y'all. Welcome to another episode of True North Sports Talk podcast. It's Peter Barclay here, and we are on Sunday, August 24th, and we are into the dog days of summer. But for the Blue Jays and us up here north of the border, this does not feel like dog days that we are witnessing in the Toronto Blue Jays right now. As you probably are aware if you're following the team at all, the Blue Jays are sitting nicely atop the AL East for the first time in a long time at 72-51, and they are 5 games ahead of the Boston Red Sox, and quite frankly, this is a completely different narrative than the one we had early in the season or even expected coming into the season. If you remember the speculation last year and even at times early in the season this year, we were talking about trading Vladdy, trading Bo Bichette. We didn't want to sign them to contracts, things like that. Those conversations, now with winning, as they say, it heals everything, they seem like ancient history these days. So today we're going to break down the past week for the Blue Jays. We're going to look ahead at some absolutely crucial series that are coming up. And there are some massive showdowns coming with the teams that are right there on their heels with Boston and New York in September. We're going to take a deep dive into what might be the most encouraging development of the season, which, thanks to some trade deadline moves made by Ross Atkins and company, they have some newfound pitching depth that's emerging and coming along at just the right time with additions like Louis Varland, Shane Bieber, and a few others. We've got some injury updates. We're going to take a comprehensive look at players like Jimmy Garcia, Bowden Francis, Alek Manoah, Anthony Santander, among others. This is something that we'll look forward to because there are some players on that list that will add to the depth of the pitching for sure. There's Nick Sandlin still around, and there's been a lot of injuries. It's been a bit of a microcosm this season, but on top of that, it's almost like we have one of the best problems you could possibly hope for as a major league team. And what that is just the fact that you can never have too much pitching, especially going into September and October. There will be expanded roster spots come September, which will be at the end of next week. So that is something that we're going to take a look at somewhere along the line here during the episode. And they've changed the rules the last couple years. You can only bring up one pitcher and one position player. So we're going to take a quick peek at potential call-ups this year. We have a couple pitchers, couple of position players that we think might be getting that call after next week coming up. So first off today, we are going to take a look at the week that was. We played against Pittsburgh, and we are now into a series with Miami that was going on beside me there just now until technical difficulties. And the Blue Jays went through a bit of a roller coaster this week, and it encapsulates both the promise and some of the remaining questions about this team. They started off the week. They were playing in Pittsburgh against one of the game's premier pitchers in Paul Skeens. And so that was a bit of a tough start. They got an exceptional start the next night and then had a bit of a hiccup in the third game. And then, yeah, they just carried on into Miami and kept their winning ways going both Friday and Saturday. So they've won the series. Hopefully they'll be able to sweep today. They had a weekend series against Texas last weekend with Alejandro Kirk, and we'll talk more about him later because he's been such an underrated story this year. And if you follow the podcast at all, we've talked about him a lot. Kirk had a clutch 2-run homer in the 7th and then a decisive 2-run single in the 8th for that 6-5 win on Friday. I actually happened to be at that game, and that showed some resilience that this team hasn't shown in the past, and it has developed it over time. And the players this year, they just don't give up right up until the last inning. They're always fighting. Kirk has been phenomenal, but then we saw the flip side of that as they struggled against some tough pitching in Pittsburgh. They've all, like, for whatever reason, while Vladdy's been out or Springer was out, their left-handed pitching has gotten to them a little bit lately. And Pittsburgh isn't exactly known to be a powerhouse, but they are a good team. And they took 2 of 3 from Toronto, including a frustrating 2-1 loss on Wednesday. And they just couldn't seem to solve Johan Oviedo, who's just making his second start since coming back from Tommy John surgery. And somehow the Jays offense allowed him to completely shut them down. Now that game was a bit of a snooze because it was a complete pitching duel. All the runs were scored in the first inning. There was no runs after that. And the Pittsburgh series is exactly why, despite the 5-game lead in the division, as Blue Jay fans, we know we can never be comfortable, especially in the American League East. This team has shown that they can beat anyone, as they had a strong series against teams like the Dodgers. They've also shown that they can lose to anyone, and the consistency factor is still probably the biggest question mark heading into September. Now, as Cito always used to say, as longtime fans of the Jays will know, is that we don't always expect you to win or sweep every single series. But what Cito said is win the series. So 2 out of 3, 3 out of 4. Just win the series. And at the end of the year, you'll be sitting in a good position. So, while we don't expect the boys to be perfect every game, while we don't expect them to be Shohei Ohtani every single time out, what we've seen is a strong effort, guys who are always trying, who are always looking to do the right thing from a baseball perspective. And there's been a lot more small ball this year instead of an emphasis on the home run. That's led to better pitches because they're going deeper into counts, they're striking out less, they're walking more, and just passing the baton to the next guy. There seems to be a trust that's built up between the guys. And what that adds up to is more winning. And I know for myself, in conversations I've had with people, I've been saying it for years. I don't care about the home run. It'll come. Out of 600 at-bats, you might hit 40 of them. That's a very small percentage. So, let's take a look at what we've learned from this week. As we know, the offense can be explosive when the opportunity comes and when it's clicking. We saw the comeback win against the Rangers, and they've had a lot of comeback victories this year, which tells you about the resilience of the team. But it can also go completely silent against pitchers like an Oviedo. Second, the starting pitching depth continues to be tested, and it's holding up better than a lot of us had expected. Now, in the second half of the season, since the All-Star break, I saw a graphic the other day that was very shocking. And maybe not what you would expect, as it showed Gausman, Lauer, and Scherzer all with sub-3 ERAs since the All-Star break. But Bassett and Barrios, either it's the age showing or there's just something there where they are much more tired. And their ERA was +4 by quite a bit. And thankfully last night, Barrios had a really strong start, going 7 innings almost. And he pitched really well. That game went to 12 innings. The boys came out with a win. But it was a nice bounce back from the previous start for Jose Barrios, as the previous one was a bit of a disaster. So the starting pitching has still been strong. I mean, even with the elevated ERAs from Barrios and Bassett, they are still piecing together wins. They're still getting the job done. It's been a very interesting time with pitchers like Shane Bieber, who made his debut on Friday night in spectacular fashion, I would say, as he pitched really well. He gave up 1 run on a home run, and the rest of the game, he was really solid. The other run they got from Miami was a home run off Yariel Rodriguez, so that obviously didn't involve Bieber. And they came away with the victory, as they're looking for the sweep today. And so the thing about it is that with that happening, if Manoah's able to come back and his rehab started going much better this week, he is on his way back too. So could we see Bassett being rested more? I mean, they moved Lauer to the bullpen for this weekend, which was a little bit surprising, but they're saying he's going to start on Wednesday again. And could we see Barrios' Ironman streak be broken just simply by the team resting him? To this point in his career, he's never missed a start. And that's an amazing feat. The only thing is it catching up to him at this point in his career, and can the Blue Jays maybe allow him to rest until they need him in the playoffs? The bullpen usage has been interesting as well. There's been some injuries here and there to guys like Nick Sandlin, Jimmy Garcia, and they've been able to stop those gaps with a Braden Fisher, Louis Varland. You have Flu Hardy, you got some of these guys, and they've been able to manage the innings. At a time in the season, they were using Jeff Hoffman way too much. Yariel Rodriguez has been a revelation out of the bullpen, as he was used as a starter last year, most of the year. And could they get the same type of Yariel Rodriguez from an Alek Manoah if they choose? And days off are very strategic. They're an advantage for a team like this. The Blue Jays have a few more off days than they had earlier in the season coming up. And they have an off day right before a crucial series with the Boston Red Sox. And they have another one before that series with the Yankees coming to Skydome. And in a division race that's tight, that rest, that's gold to a team with pitchers who have been overworked at times, but they need that rest. And they have 20, 30 games left in the season, and Toronto can get these strategic breathers. It means fresher arms in the bullpen, more rest for an, as it were, aging lineup with guys like Springer, Ty France, who are getting up there a bit. Guys like Gausman, Scherzer, Barrios. So yeah, they got to make some real good strides here. And we'll see how that goes. Now, let's see what the playoff push is going to be like for the Blue Jays. We got some big series coming up, as we mentioned. We got at least one with Boston, if not two. We have one with the Yankees at Skydome, as we mentioned. That series with Cleveland that last week of the season, that's going to be a big series. And little did they know, the schedule makers, they couldn't have designed a more dramatic finish to the regular season. Hoping the Blue Jays stay in first and staying with the Tigers, that means they will avoid the wild card round for the first time in a lot of years. But let's take a quick look first and break down by the series. So first up is Boston. That series going from September 6th to the 8th. That's in Fenway. And that's a big 3 games against the team that's sitting 5 games back right now. We'll see what it is by the time they get here. If Boston sweeps, suddenly that's like a 1, maybe a 2 game lead from the 5 that they are at. If Toronto takes 2 of 3 or sweeps, they could effectively put any challenge to their winning the division out of its misery. And the timing couldn't be better for Toronto, as they have that off day on September 5th, which means they can set their rotation up so that if you're the Blue Jays, you're facing Bieber, Scherzer. You could have it where Gausman pitches, and your best guys are going out there in that series. And yeah, you can have them lined up exactly how you want against Boston, and they need it the most at that point in time. And then, shortly after that, we get the real drama, as everyone hates the Yankees when they're not in New York, and that's at Skydome, going from September 13th to the 15th. And who knows, by then, New York might even be out of the wild card race if they keep going the way they are. Who knows? We'll see what it looks like. They're still fighting for a wild card at this point in time. But any AL East games in September always have extra intensity. You also need to win the season series for any tie-breaking purposes to make sure that you're in the best position. And the interesting part about the Yankees series is it comes right after a series that Toronto has against Baltimore. So you could see a scenario where Baltimore is trying to play the spoiler against Toronto. Now, if information I saw today is correct, if that's at Camden Yards, that's a place over the recent years that has given Toronto a lot of difficulty. So then the Yankees come in with their own playoff lives on the line, and so these just aren't going to be easy games. No team's going to just lay over or roll over and die for you. You got to go out there and take it. So they got to keep the intensity up. And so let's talk some numbers for a minute. With 39 games left in the season, Toronto's number to clinch the division could sit 25, 27 games, depending on how Boston does. But this is the thing. This isn't just about clinching the division. They also want home field advantage. They want to avoid the wild card round, and they want to challenge for the top seed in the American League overall, so that they have home field advantage all throughout the playoffs. The American League landscape is fascinating this year, as you've got Toronto leading the East, but the West is absolutely brutal, and the Central is less than wide open because Detroit is kind of run away with that one a little bit. And in the West, you got Houston, you got Texas, you got Seattle fighting for spots. And so it's kind of brutal out there, and Toronto realistically could finish anywhere from the 2 seed where they're sitting right now, and we want them to stay there and go as low as the last wild card spot, depending on how things go. So there are massive implications coming up in September baseball. It's been a long time since September has meant this much to this team, going back almost 10 years. So let's game out some scenarios. If they win the division and secure that spot where they're sitting right now, they could get a bye through the wild card round, and that's what we're aiming for, straight to the division series. Some rest on the extra side would be huge, especially given that in the last part of the season, when Barrios has extra days, when Gausman has extra days, Bassett too, they seem to pitch better and go deeper into games and be stronger. And even if they do slip to a wild card, this team seems to show that they've learned some things from the past, and their pitching depth combined with an offense that can explode at any moment, that makes them dangerous no matter where they land in the wild card. Some other crucial series to watch out for is they've got a series with Tampa Bay coming up. Tampa Bay always plays Toronto tough. Doesn't matter where they are, whether it's George Steinbrenner Field, whether it's the Trop. The only place we seem to be able to get much out of them is when they play at Skydome. Then there's that late September series against Detroit. The Tigers could be in their own battle at that point. That's going to be a big series. And every game right now, it just matters so much. The beauty of the schedule is that Toronto really has the ability here to control its own destiny. They are watching the scoreboard, but they don't necessarily need to, because if they just take care of their own business, especially in those divisional games against Tampa Bay, Baltimore, Boston, New York, if they take care of that business, that puts them in a really good spot to be playing October baseball for the first time since 2022, and in the division series for the first time since 2016. Alright, the next thing we're going to take a look at here is what we've already mentioned that has come around this season that in years past just hasn't been there for this Blue Jays team. That would be the depth at pitching. So we'll dive into what might be the most encouraging development of this season. We thought from the beginning we'd have strong starting pitching, but then everything was a question mark after that. So there emerged a legitimate pitching depth, and 6 months ago, if you told us that the Blue Jays would have 5 or 6, even 7 viable starting pitchers heading into September, we'd have probably all had a good laugh at that. And the thing about it was, if you think about the early season rotation, it was supposed to be Gausman, Barrios, Bassett, Bowden, Francis was in that original starting rotation, and Max Scherzer. Things didn't go how they were supposed to. Bowden Francis looked okay in his first start. Scherzer got hurt in his first start and was gone for a couple of months. And then Bowden Francis started showing some cracks. So at times, it felt like the Blue Jays were running on a 3-man rotation with 2 bullpen days every time through, which is why I think we're seeing what we are with Bassett and Barrios right now, because they had to really go out there and grind out a lot of time that they wouldn't have normally had to do. During that time where they were doing bullpen days, they started using a guy by the name of Eric Lauer. And he started as an opener, or he would come in behind the opener. and he just ran with it. All of a sudden, he became your ace, even though he was the fourth starter. And then they were doing bullpen days until Scherzer came back, and we weren't sure how that was going to go. And with Eric Lauer taking over and Max Scherzer coming back as strong as he has and being able to manage the thumb issue, we now have 5 really solid starters. Ross Atkins went out at the deadline and got Shane Bieber. And with Alek Manoah coming back, both of those two guys from Tommy John, we might have 7 starters going into the playoffs. It's been a really remarkable journey to watch. And we can start with the obvious. The return of Max Scherzer has been everything that we all hoped it would be at the beginning of the season. And at more than 40 years old, I mean, he turned 41, he's still able to, he's a cerebral guy. He's still giving them quality innings, veteran leadership. He's been around younger guys. You can call Lauer younger at 30 years old. You simply can't quantify that by statistics. His presence alone changes the entire dynamic of this rotation, as does the addition of a Cy Young winner in Shane Bieber as well. You're looking at a potential playoff rotation with Scherzer, Gausman, either Lauer or Bieber, and then you also have Bassett and Barrios that are there should the need arise. That's a real legit postseason roster. It's going to be scary for whoever they get in a playoff series because they're going to be running out guys with Cy Young experience. And here's where it gets really interesting. The depth pieces that have emerged in Eric Lauer, Varland, you could have Jimmy Garcia come back. Bowden Francis, you don't know what's going on there. There's going to be a lot of innings. Well, there's innings, but maybe too many guys for it to be spread amongst, right? So, yeah, the development of some younger arms, Braden Fisher, Brandon Little, you got Fluharty, some of those guys coming along have given really meaningful contributions, and they've proven that potentially in the playoffs, that stage may not be too big for them. And they were in the conversation back in spring training for spots on this team, and they've really come through and given this team depth that they didn't know they have. So over these last 39 games, it's going to be real interesting to watch. We've been talking strategy all the way along, so with the off days strategically placed in September, Toronto has the luxury of potentially using or going with 6 guys and moving Lauer in and out or moving different guys in and out for stretches and help keep their pitching fresh and rested going into the playoffs. They don't want to overdo the rest too much, but they could skip a start here or there. And the bullpen depth has been equally impressive, even with some of the injuries that have gone on. And we'll take a look at some of those guys coming up here shortly. They've just found ways to piece together late inning situations. Jeff Hoffman has been dominant at times. He's given up some home runs at times, but he has really done a nice job stepping in when they lost Jordan Romano to free agency. So the key question is, will this depth hold up under playoff pressure? You have Max Scherzer, you got Shane Bieber, who have been deep in the playoffs, who know what it feels like. You got Barrios and Gausman, who know what playoff baseball feels like. So you feel like this team has enough guys that if you give them enough rest in between things, you can get 7 or 8 innings possibly out of some of these guys going into the playoffs. Scherzer and Gausman, again Bieber, they all become very valuable in that situation. The other advantage of this depth is that it gives you injury protection if anything should happen to any one of those guys. It's a bit of an insurance. So if you lose a guy here or there, you have someone ready to step in that you know is tested and can just give the entire team the trust and belief that they can carry on and just pick up where the guy going out has left off. They've built up enough depth that we think they can weather any late season injury. The usage patterns, they've been pretty smart too. John Schneider's done a fairly decent job of not overworking anyone, and they're keeping the pitch counts as reasonable as possible and being strategic about when to push guys, when to pull back, because for a while there we didn't see Dominguez out of the bullpen that much. He's been pitching the last couple of days. We saw Varland pretty heavy at one point. They've pulled him back a little bit, same with Fluharty and Fisher. And come September, October, that's going to pay some pretty large dividends for the Blue Jays come playoff time. So that's a real good indication of how they're going to make a playoff push. Alright, so let's talk injuries for a minute, because going into September and October, injuries are important as to who they're going to get back and how they're going to move forward. Now, all season, the Blue Jays have had some concerning amounts of injuries take place to some key guys. Thinking about right out of the gate, Max Scherzer. Jimmy Garcia's been in and out of the lineup. You've had Bowden Francis go down to injury, and there's just, you never know what's going to happen. So we'll start with Jimmy Garcia, because this one has been really kind of complicated a little bit. They re-signed Garcia in free agency after they traded him at the deadline last year. He's dealt with multiple issues this year. He started with a right shoulder impingement. He fought his way back, and that happened back in May. And he was recently shut down with an ulnar nerve issue in his right elbow. Now, anyone who knows anything about that type of thing knows that's truly concerning. His situation is a little bit frustrating, because when healthy, he's been probably the most reliable relief pitcher that the Blue Jays have had since he first got here, probably about 5 years ago. The ulnar nerve issue is concerning, because if that lingers, that can lead to things like Tommy John. That can take some years off of his career, and that can affect his command significantly. The latest report suggests he's been shut down from throwing for several days, and they are continuing to evaluate the situation. Bowden Francis, that's another significant loss, as he was expected to bring strength to the starting rotation. Before they put him in the rotation last year, he was good as a long man, as a setup man. He had a shoulder impingement that has kept him out since the middle of June, and while he's started throwing again in Florida, there's no real definite timeline they're thinking for his return. Do they need him to return? Probably not, so we may not see him again this year. The latest update suggests he could potentially get there by the end of September, but there's no guarantee of that. Francis was having a tough year before the injury. His command came and went, as it were, probably due to the injury. He struggled at times. He looked brilliant at other times. But he was supposed to be the fourth man in the rotation, and we were talking moving him to the bullpen before the injury took place. So losing him for the season has definitely been unexpected. It wasn't a good thing where he was at that point. So hopefully he comes back strong next year and we get the Bowden Francis of last year. Alek Manoah is a lot closer than most, and he is probably being more closely watched, and he's throwing side sessions. He's moved up from the different levels to start with Buffalo the last few weeks, and he's progressing. His last start, he went 4 2/3. He allowed 1 or 2 runs. And so his situation is important, because if he can get back to that original form that he had, he doesn't have to be quite as good as he was, but a small step back, and even 95% of what he was is still going to be really darn good. He'd be a solid piece in your rotation. And Scherzer's on a 1-year deal. Bieber has a team option for next year, and you need Manoah to come back in that form that he had from 2-3 years ago. He can do it. Don't expect him necessarily back this week, but again, another arm that could be there going into September. Anthony Santander has been injured a lot this year. He's a switch hitting outfielder. And given what he potentially could provide, he's been into October baseball with the Baltimore Orioles, so he has experience there. His timeline, he's been swinging a little bit. We're not sure exactly when he's going to be back. The organization just is not intent on rushing him back. I don't see the need to. Where he was hitting before he got injured, he wasn't hitting necessarily real well. Maybe he was trying too hard with his new team. He's, as far as we know, been good in the clubhouse. But I think the guys who have filled in around him since he's been gone have done far more than adequate. The switch hitting would be nice. There's other names to watch. Nick Sandlin has had arm issues. He's got more encouraging report possibly that would add even more depth to the bullpen and the depth that they've built. Again, he's not a guy that you want to rush back necessarily, but he could provide rest for some of the guys you want going into September, late September, October baseball. So having everyone there, having everyone ready, it's going to be crucial. Just some updates on the injuries surrounding the team, and the timing of potential returns is going to be everything. Can you get them back up to speed in Major League Baseball? We'll see Garcia and Francis. I'm not necessarily encouraged or excited to bring them back necessarily this year. They could add depth and help the final push if Manoah can work his way back and prove he's ready for meaningful innings mid-late September. Does he come out of the bullpen? Is he a setup guy, a long man? But anything he can provide will help their chances come October. Off days are strategic, and how John Schneider chooses to use those will really tell a big story. Just quickly about John Schneider, I've been hearing whispers and rumblings that he's potentially up for Coach of the Year. And based on how this team is done versus expectations, that's not a far cry. Something that doesn't get enough attention, though, is how they've taken advantage of having off days, how they've given guys off days, even though they weren't necessarily scheduled. Toronto's off days in September are really well set up going into the Boston New York series. They have off days before that. And so it's one of those things that either casual fans or even some pretty deep into this fans, they don't necessarily think about or see where those make a big difference between winning the division, losing the division, being in the wild card, not having to do that. So when you have an off day before a series, it's crucial because you can set your rotations so that the guys you want hit, guys in the bullpen get some rest so they're ready for the series. And even position players, maybe you give Vladdy an extra day off leading into a Boston, a New York. They're at Fenway when they play Boston. That's one of Vladdy's real hot spots for hitting. So hopefully that continues. And it's a massive thing that could be the difference between a pennant, as in the American League, East, or just being a wild card team. Scherzer, Gausman, Bassett, that'll be a big series when they're playing. And depending on where Boston is, coming off of the series that they'll be involved in before that, it could be everything to have that off day. And it's a psychological aspect too, because it mentally gives you some rest. And when days off in the middle of a pennant race, it allows you to sort of do a reset. I mean, they showed on an off day this week that the boys went snorkeling, they were swimming, they were having fun, just no baseball. And sometimes there's a movie called The Last Samurai where they talk about too many mind. If you're too focused on certain things, if you're thinking about hearing all these voices, that's not always a good thing. And so sometimes you just need to relax, take your mind off things, and that helps you play all the better. So far in the Miami series, that's worked out. A little while ago, Miami hit a home run, leading 1-0 bottom of the fourth. As an update for you guys, you'll probably know the final score by the time this drops. And those off days, they allow you to be more aggressive in how you pitch and how you play during these series that are coming up that are going to be so important going into a playoff push. So how are the Blue Jays going to handle this situation? Yet to be seen. As it looks so far, it's kind of like what they did this weekend, I think, where they moved Lauer to the bullpen temporarily. They're going to put him back in on Wednesday. That'll bump everyone else back a day. Doesn't mean someone's coming out of the rotation. Then they might pull Lauer out again, let the guys go through, put him back in, push everyone back a bit, and that just allows everyone to stay rested and sharp in the pennant race. Alright, so where we're at here, I just want to take a quick moment and talk about September call-ups. There are some guys who could potentially be the guys who get the call coming up in September, depending on what they're going to be used for, who knows. One of the names on the list has been a starter up until recently in AAA. And so it will be interesting if he gets the call, where and how they decide to use him. So the first name on the list is Trey Savage. He's the Blue Jays' number one prospect. He's number 26 overall in Major League Baseball. And his first start in AAA was a bit rocky. But again, every time you get to a new level, there is just that feeling out process that guys go through. And so this will be no different. Trey Savage, they may bring him up. He would be bullpen depth if they need a long man, if they need a starter, spot starter here or there, or just any of those type of deals. So that's the first pitcher on the list. The second one being Jake Bloss. He has done well at AAA this year, and so we'll see. He could be another one brought up. He brings depth to the bullpen, he brings length out of the bullpen, and he brings playoff experience, having pitched in Houston before coming to Toronto. And we all know Houston's been perennially in the playoffs the last 10 years or so. And so that just brings more depth and experience to the guys in the pitching staff. Now, Aurelvis Martinez may be a guy that we see brought up as a position player. He's an infielder, brings versatility. He brings a little bit of power. We haven't seen him for a while at this level. And so it'll be interesting to see how that would turn out and how he would react to the opportunity to play a little bit in September. And Joey Loperfido, if they bring him back, we know he's played really well even with the big league club this season. And so that would be another position player available. Alright, so let's talk about what needs to happen with the Jays team to not just make the playoffs, but to do really well and make some noise in the playoffs. Once they do get there, and we have a feeling that this year they really are in a good position not only to get to the playoffs, but win the division. So first and foremost, they need to stay an element of healthy. We've talked about all the injury situations. The reality is they need Vladdy, they need Bo and Kirky and all these guys to stay healthy for the stretch run. If they were able somehow to get a Garcia or a Francis back, that would be huge. But they really, really do need to keep their health going. The offense needs to be a little more consistent, especially against left-handed pitching. With George Springer being back, that will definitely help against left-handed pitching. They need to find ways to score runs in bunches, string hits together, get the walks going, get the bunts going the way they had at times this season, play a lot of small ball, and that will give them better pitches to hit to add in and sprinkle in the home runs. And they really need to have a strong September against all these American League opponents. That can really help them pad their lead. They need at least 92 to 100 wins. And they just need to keep their bullpen strong, keep everybody rested as possible. And October baseball, it's all about pitching and defense. And they're really going to have to make sure that their high leverage guys, their starters, and Jeff Hoffman all are healthy. They've been great when healthy, and they just need to keep that depth going. So, as you guys know, I'm not one for predictions. I'm not here to say that the Jays are going to win the World Series, but I believe that this team, based on how it's set up at this point in time, it is set up to and is capable of making a really deep run into the playoffs this season. For some reason, this team just never feels out of a game. They remind me of teams of 10 years ago, like 2015, 2016. They have some good young players. They have a balance with veteran leadership. They have guys who have been to the playoffs, who have been deep in the playoffs, which Shane Bieber's been deep. Max Scherzer's won the World Series a couple of times. And So there's guys who have that experience. George Springer's been to the World Series. You have Kevin Gausman, you have Barrios, guys who have been there, done that, and they're going to need them as they take on the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Tampa Bay Rays, and they have to try and extend, not just maintain this 5-game lead, but they got to try and make it grow and get bigger. The beautiful thing is, the first time in years, as Blue Jays fans up here north of the border, we can look forward to October baseball. And this isn't hoping and praying for a wild card spot this year. We're looking at another banner being hung in Skydome. And just the AL being won by the Blue Jays and getting home field advantage throughout the playoffs. They're legitimate division threat. They're legitimate as a team that is going to make a lot of noise in the playoffs, and we look forward to seeing how that plays out. So, that's going to do it for me today. We took a real deep, comprehensive dive into the Blue Jays playoff push. Hope you learned some things. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got caught up on all the injury buzz around the team. And for the most part, I just want to say enjoy the next month, month and a half or more, depending on how far they go. I don't think this team is just hype. I think the numbers back it up. At 72-51 with 39 games to play, I'd say they need to win another 25 or so games. If they can manage that, keep that lead, that separation between them and the teams behind them, and with some guys coming back from injury, I think this team is really ready for playoff baseball. I still believe in the offseason. Some changes need to be made at the top of the Blue Jays organization. But for the next month and a half, let's enjoy the ride. We'll be back. We'll talk more about how this team is doing as these series unfold. And again, we'll be back next week with a new episode of True North Sports Talk Podcast. It may not be Blue Jays that we're talking about, but it's going to be a lot of fun. So all you Blue Jays fans out there, strap yourself in. Get ready for the next month and a half. We're going to have an awesome run from the boys. And enjoy it. Until then, let's keep the conversation going. Hashtag True North Sports Talk. Share this with your friends. Let them know, hey, you found someone who just doesn't go with the hype and the narrative. We're going to talk facts. We're going to talk legit different things that are going on with the team, and yeah, enjoy it. We'll be back. We'll see you next week, and thanks for joining us here at True North Sports Talk Podcast. Once again, this is Peter Barclay saying we'll see you next time.